All right, we are at the top of the hour. Hello, my friends from Woodwall. It's great to see you here. And everyone else that's joining, whether you are coming from the Greenshot Accelerator Program, Cleantech Open, or heard about this on social media, we are thrilled to have you here today. My name is Susan Hunt Stevens, and I'll be your moderator for today's webinar on government funding for clean tech startups. This topic is near and dear to my heart as an entrepreneur who built a business in the sustainability space. Before exiting last year, I raised $13 million over 10 years in equity capital from pretty much every single possible source, including government funding. Ours came from the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center, and it was transformational for us. As you all know who've ever tried to raise capital for a startup, fundraising is hard work. Whether it's applying for grants or meeting with dozens, if not in some cases hundreds of investors, whether you're trying to land your very first lead investor or close out the end of your fifth round. So today we've pulled together an incredible team of experts to tell you about everything that is happening on the government funding front. It is a really exciting time, an incredibly different landscape than even just a couple of years ago. One of my favorite slides from COP28 when I was there showed that between August of 2022 and 2023, the Inflation Reduction Act had driven investment in clean tech manufacturing alone from $8 billion a month to $84 billion a month. It is a staggering amount of money. And Mark Carney, who's the former governor of the Bank of England, said that really only two countries on the planet could pull this off, the US and China. But navigating this government funding can be super complex. So our goal today is to save you time and make you aware of opportunities that you might not know existed, not just with the IRA, but with the Defense Department, through SBIR, and more. So a few housekeeping notes. First of all, we're going to ask you to stay on mute. This is a meeting format, not a webinar. And so all of the folks can hear you if you are not on mute. We would love for you to post questions throughout the webinar into the chat. We'll be devoting a significant portion of time towards the end of the webinar towards any and all of those questions. Also be aware, I know you had to accept when you came in that this is being recorded, but we will provide you with both the recording and the speaker slides, not only to you all, but to anyone who registered afterwards. So let me just tell you a little bit about how the next hour and 25 minutes is going to work. First, I'm going to introduce you to the speakers. Each of them has a short presentation, chock full of information. And then there'll be some conversation after their presentation, and then we will open it up to audience questions. Our goal is to really turn this over to you and hear what's on your mind once they've laid out the landscape of opportunities, options, and how it works in front of you. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen and just go into introductions. So first, Greg Bruton is a management and program analyst with the U.S. Department of Energy, Office of Economic Impact and Diversity, Minority Business and Workforce Division. He is an electrical engineer with over 15 years of engineering experience and additional 17 years of work-life experience with the financial and healthcare sectors. He brings his energy and passion with his unique set of technical engineering, energy subject matter expert, and public speaking to this position. Most recently, he hails from the utility sector and has supported electrical grid modernization pilots and programs since 2016. He's former secretary of the Greater Boston chapter of the American Association of Blacks in Energy, member of the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers, and the National Society of Black Engineers. Gregory's passion for mentoring the next generation is shown through his nonprofit affiliations with mentoring groups and activities with youth groups, from refereeing basketball to instructing youth swimming classes. He has a BS in electrical and computer engineering from Drexel and his Master of Science in a Massachusetts institution, the Worcester Polytech. Dr. Lulu has experience ranging from academic science to leading scientific efforts at a startup. As a chemist with broad expertise in polymer science and analytical chemistry, Dr. Lu has leveraged grant funding to achieve new advancements in her field. She founded a startup to develop a smart polymeric sealant for pavement joints or cracks. The project was funded by the National Science Foundation, NSF, SBR, Phase 1 and Phase 2 grants. Dr. Lou served as the principal investigator for the funded project. As a scientific consultant for EGC, Dr. Lou enjoys feeling the enthusiasm of entrepreneurs and being able to assist them in securing the resources needed to develop their technologies. She's helped clients in securing non-dilutive funding for over USD $120 million. And for those of you not familiar, I know we have a wide range of experience among entrepreneurs. Non-dilutive funding means you don't give up equity to get that money, whereas other forms of funding, you're giving up equity to get that funding or taking on a debt obligation, which can always be interesting. Dr. Richard Carlin has over 40 years of experience in scientific research spanning academia, industry, and government, with extensive experience in national security innovation focused on energy and climate resilience. As a senior executive with the Office of Naval Research, he provided technical and strategic advice to senior leaders, and he established several innovation initiatives for the Department of the Navy. One such initiative brought Silicon Valley innovation and entrepreneurial best practices to the naval R&D community. A key theme of Dr. Carlin has been promoting innovation ecosystems that combine education, technology, and commercialization to increase local and regional economic and workforce development. An early success was the establishment of the Asia-Pacific Technology and Education Partnership, promoting clean tech opportunities in Hawaii for the Pacific region, followed by similar activity in Alaska for the Arctic region, the Alaska Regional Collaboration for Technology, Innovation, and Commercialization. With that, we are going to get started with Greg. So we're going to go ahead and get his presentation shared and walk through all of what's happening at the DOE level. So Greg, over to you.
Thanks, Susan. Nice to meet everyone. Kwame, did you want to go ahead and try, or should I try? Sorry, guys, we were having some technical difficulty. Okay, perfect. Okay, I'm going to blow through these slides. These are 26 slides. This is not 26 slides of it's a lot of information, but basically, this is information everyone can use. And I still argue with my team about this equation here. As an engineer and as a math guy, like this, I hate this slide, but we have to use it. So anyway, Kwame, could you advance, please? Okay, so fast facts about the Department of Energy. This slide just basically says the Department of Energy is large. There are just tons of offices, tons of departments where all these individuals, are basically working towards various areas of either cybersecurity or energy, clean energy, just tons of different offices, and you can read that at your leisure. I'm sure we're going to share all these slides. Next slide, please. So my specific office, the Office of Energy, Justice, and Equity, our mission is to identify and implement ways of ensuring that everyone is afforded an opportunity to participate fully in the Department of Energy's programs, opportunities, and resources. That basically sums it up. It includes, helping Black and Brown people, individuals that are looking to, have some opportunities that they previously weren't allowed or even knew of or aware of. So we make sure that all this information is readily available, really to the entire states. But our specific group's focus is for minority businesses. Next slide, please. So one of the things you're hearing is all of these large dollar amounts for funding opportunities. As you can see here, $6.62 billion in bipartisan infrastructure law funding by the DOE. I think I mentioned earlier, the DOE also funds the Department of Defense, but we also go into clean energy opportunities. The J40 initiative, which is on our next slide, will talk about some additional initiatives, and also there's the 30+ billion in Inflation Reduction Act, IRA, as Susan, I think you had mentioned earlier. Next slide, please. So Justice 40, also known as EO 14008, states that 40% of all benefits of certain federal investments. So basically, instead of reading off of this screen, any money spent on clean energy, 40% of the money spent on clean energy needs to what's the word? It needs to benefit underserved communities. That can include communities that, you know, we typically think of underserved as minority communities, but that's not just the case. There are just various, you know, I guess cities and states where everyone is afforded, or at least could be afforded, a better opportunity. And these funds, according to President Biden's initiative, specifically are designed to go into those areas. Next slide. Okay, so what does Justice 40 cover? It covers climate change, clean energy, clean transportation, training and workforce development. Some of the covered investments are the financing. So for instance, and I'll go into it in further slides. So even though there are grants and prizes out there, there's also loans and guaranteed monies as well. Let's go to the next slide. This is a tool that actually helps individuals determine where these funds can be spent. So the map on the right talks about how this was the typical map that we were using before to determine these underserved communities. We've broadened the scope of the map, and now you see on the left, these are the areas where the underserved communities are also, you know, we're able to engage with them as well. Next slide, please. Here's another funding opportunity, low-income communities bonus credit program. These are opportunities for receiving tax credits if you're engaging in distributed wind, solar, and associated energy storage opportunities. Next slide, please. Now, we had mentioned earlier, I think Dr. Lulu is going to speak about SBIR, but basically every government department has an SBIR, or Small Business Innovation Research group. Our SBIR, you know, just focuses on clean energy. One of the things that we try to assist with these individuals who are applying for these fundings is that you need to be a good fit. You know, your idea is novel. It's not that you can't, you know, propose solar panels, but, you know, what's so novel about your approach to solar panels? So there's different ways to approach it, but the funding opportunities are there. The next slide. So here's some of the phases for participating in a funding opportunity. There's a phase 1 through 4. I'll let you guys read that. That's just a lot of information. Can we go to the next slide? Now, what's unique to the DOE is a phase 0. So basically, we do a 12-week program, and we assist the individuals who are applying for the SBIR phase 1 application. We provide patent attorneys, 10 hours of market research, training assistance. All of this is free, where you would most likely have paid for this prior to applying for an application. Next slide, please. So in addition to grants and applying for you know, various projects that we put out, there's also the loan program office. These loans, they range from interest-free. This was actually the loan program that loaned, what's his name? The Tesla gentleman, I forget his name. I don't know why, but loaned him roughly $50 million, but there was a $10 million buy-in. Actually, no, it was 500 million. My apologies. So yeah, so it's definitely an opportunity if you're able to meet the qualifications. Next slide, please. This is just more information about the loan program office for direct loans, innovative energy loan guarantees, and partial loan guarantees. I'm going to just blow through these because this is information you can read later. Next slide, please. OSED, which is our Office of Clean Energy Demonstration. They have a $25 billion opportunity where any of these various areas. If you have projects in and we have expressed a need for some development in there, companies can participate, such as industrial demonstrations, advanced reactors. Carbon management is a big item that we have, and clean energy on mined land, trying to move forward with doing things with the previously coal areas. Next slide, please. Just more information about what OSID is looking for. And energy storage has been a pretty hot topic recently as well. Next slide, please. Actually, this slide should have been first, but OSID is it's just more information about OSID. We can keep going. And for brevity of time, just keep going. The manufacturing supply chain, Bill 40209. This is funding that has been set aside for manufacturing. So if any individuals are not necessarily the technology drivers, but they can manufacture the technology, this is funding set aside for them. Next slide, please. The Industrial Assessment Centers, or our IAC program, is focused on servicing universities. Next slide, please. Here are some of the universities that they typically focus on. At least for my group, we have focused on historically Black universities and colleges, but this money, of course, is available to all universities. Next slide, please. Here's another some more information about the IAC program. $150 million is scheduled to be dispersed over between 22 and 26. And $400 million in grants. Next slide, please. Here are some other opportunities, and as you get this PDF, you can go ahead and click on them and get more information. You can keep going. Again, more information. One more slide. This is, again, more information, just spelling out all of the opportunities that the bill and IRA workforce development programs provide to. I believe there's links for this as well. You can continue. This is a nice prize where some buildings. So for instance, let's say you're making your building green. These are funding opportunities that are set aside for building out or upgrading your buildings, and the government has put aside monies for that. Next slide, please. All right, made it. So, I don't know if that was 10 minutes or not. Let's see. Oh, that was a little longer. My apologies. But here's
great,
my
Greg.
Yeah, here's my information. My email, my phone number is there. You can scan that if you need to. You can reach out to me, and there is a team of 12 of us where we can actually zero down into some information that you may specifically need versus some of the information that was provided. Thank you.
That's obviously a ton of information. That's amazing. You will all be getting the presentation afterwards. It's hyperlinked to help navigate. It's hard to cover everything that the IRA is doing in this period of time, but the goal is to give you just a sense of like, oh my gosh, there is so much opportunity there. Now, mixing and matching with what you were specifically doing as an entrepreneur is the key. But what Greg mentioned that we're now going to go in a little more depth is SBIR. And for startup entrepreneurs in particular, researchers, people in the early stages of kicking the tires, phase 0, as you heard about, SBIR is an incredible source of funding. So Dr. Lulu, we're going to turn it over to you to learn more about that and some of the other aspects of early stage investments that can come from government.
Absolutely. Thank you, Susan. Is it looking good?
Looks great.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. Today, during my 8 to 10 minutes, I will give you a very high-level overview on how to leverage non-dilutive funding to support your innovation. A little bit about our firm first. Garland Consulting was funded to advance science and also accelerate technologies. And we specialize obtaining, and also managing the grant funding to support R&D of those innovations. There are over 30 PhD level scientific consultants like myself, and most of us serve as the review panels on SBIR STTR program. We have extensive working experience with SBIR STTR program, and also some of us have very direct entrepreneur experience in the past. To date, we have served over 2,000 clients in all 50 states through US and also worldwide. We have helped clients secure and manage over 1.5 billion in non-dilutive funding. 7 years straight, we were ranked as the fastest growing company on Inc. 5000, and also in 2017, we are the #1 fastest growing woman-led company in the state of North Carolina. We published a book about how to write competitive SBIR proposals, both targeting NIH, National Institute of Health, and also NSF, National Science Foundation, and they are selling on Amazon. Startups often sit in the valley of death where their technology development is at a critical stage where they need a lot of funding support to advance the technology development. However, this is the stage there are limited VC funding available. Less than 1% of companies have success in secure VC funding, and even for the successful ones, usually it takes them 6 to 9 months to receive VC funding. The reason is because the majority of the VC funding are going towards the early commercialization of the technology, where the technology has already passed the prototype stage and already significantly de-risked. From 2008 to 2018, even though we can see the total VC value has increased over the years, however, the early stage VC deal that is below 5 million has been decreasing. So to bypass the valley of death, entrepreneurs are encouraged to use non-dilutive funding to advance the technology development. There are 11 federal agencies that has the SBIR STTR program. Each year, there are $3 billion set aside for SBIR STTR mechanism. And other than SBIR STTR, there are also many, many private foundations out there that provide non-dilutive funding. A little bit about the SBIR STTR program. SBIR stands for Small Business Innovation Research, which was established in 1982. STTR stands for Small Business Technology Transfer Program, which was established in 1992. The key difference is that STTR, there is a mandatory participation from a nonprofit research institution, and that the budget allocation between those two mechanisms are slightly different, which we can dive in more details later if you have questions. So both programs, their mission is to meet the federal R&D needs and to increase private sector commercialization of the innovation that's derived from federal research funding, to stimulate technology innovation, and also foster and encourage participation from socially and economically disadvantaged persons. The pathway, as Greg mentioned, there are 3 phases. Phase 1, usually it's a shorter phase, 6 to 12 months. It's $100,000 roughly to $700,000, depending on the agency and the topic area you are submitting. In this phase, the focus is to develop the concept, to de-risk the technology, to build that prototype. And in phase 2, it's a relatively longer phase, 2 to 3 years, and the budget is ranging from $750K to $3 million, where entrepreneurs can really focus on building that prototype, validate and test it in a relevant environment. And in phase 3, there will be no SBIR funding available, and entrepreneurs are encouraged to go outside and seek funding from other sources. So who can apply SBIR and STTR awards? The qualification is that the business has to be for profit and with 500 or less employees. And it has to be greater than 50% US owned by one or more individuals, small business concerns, or a combination of these. For SBIR mechanism only, it's okay that the company is more than 50% owned by multiple venture capital companies, hedge funds, private equity, or a combination of these, but no single one can own over 50%. On this slide, it showed a nice funding planner that published on SBIR website, and I include the link down below. And this planner has been updated last year in September. It showed all the participating agencies for the SBIR STTR mechanism and the timeline on when those topics and solicitation will be open and when should you target for the submission. For entrepreneurs yourself, I think it would be really beneficial if you could develop a Gantt chart like this, identify the funding opportunity that is relevant to you, and planning on when do you submit and how much funding you can anticipate from the potential funding opportunities, and when do you anticipate to receive the funding to help you organize. So before you start preparing the proposals and submit it to the specific topic or agency, here is a checklist to help you get ready. So first is to consider what is your technology development stage. Is it a phase 1 or is it ready for a direct phase 2? Do you need more preliminary data? And second, really think about the innovative aspect of your technology. And how is this differentiated from other solutions in the marketplace or in the development stage? And third, really understand the technology development pathway from idea to lab all the way to the commercialization. And whether you have a business plan ready, and even though a full business plan is not needed for a phase 1 application, but some agency or mechanism do require you have a pretty comprehensive commercialization plan ready even during your phase 1. And next, understand the review process. When you prepare the proposal, read the review criteria and understand how can you put in the most competitive proposal. And last, allocate some time to prepare the proposal. As we described fully in the book we published for a phase 1 proposal, allocating 10 weeks is a good amount of time to put together that competitive. And that's all I have, and happy to answer any questions the team have later on. And if you have additional questions, or if you want to understand further what EGC can provide to assist you later, feel free to reach out to Delilah or myself. And I think Delilah is on call today, and she will put her information, contact information in the chat, so all the entrepreneurs have the access to. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lulu. We're now going to turn to the topic of funding through the Department of Defense. Some of you may not realize that 40% of, I think it's the US federal budget is in the DoD. There is a lot of money there, and there's a lot of opportunity for clean tech startups because there are so many connections between defense, resilience, and risk management and clean technologies. The most expensive gallon of gasoline on this planet is one that needs to get brought to the front line, but not just in terms of the dollar cost, it's actually the body count associated with it as well. So when you think about the military value of moving to not having fuel lines, solar, and things like that, you're talking about a real social and human impact, not just a financial benefit of that transition. And so there's just exciting stuff that's happened for a long time in the military on sustainability and clean technologies. So Dr. Richard Carlin, I'm going to push it over to you now.
Okay, Thank you, Susan. So I want to expand a couple quick things. Your point, Susan, about how the Department of Defense is in the clean tech space. I don't think we would always call that back in the day, because I go back long enough back when we were originally in the whole space of that and cutting back on delivery of fuel into the field in Afghanistan and so forth. So that was a big play in that, right? But of course, that's renewables, all these various ways. It really is the clean tech technology. So when you think about clean tech for the Department of Defense, I do climate now, by the way. We couldn't say that through the years, by the way. Now we can. But the reality is that the technologies that help the warfighter in those ways for mission success, including our installations, where I currently have my work part-time for the installations command, those are a perfect fit. So when a lot of companies don't think that the DoD, there'd be able to DoD, you might be surprised to find out that that's not the case. We are very interested. You just have to understand what the Department of Defense wants, its mission, and frame it in that manner. And let me also, Dr. Lulu, great presentation, SBIR. I'm going to flow into that just real quick. That the Department of Defense has obviously a very large SBIR program, and that is a great entryway for startup. I see some questions in the chat. I won't go into. There's some things you need to think about when you're going to get involved in that with the federal government. That is an issue, but it's a great way to, especially if you're very starting. And it can help with the valley of death in that kind of situation. One of the things the Navy did a number of years ago, they helped work with the Silicon Valley people out of Stanford, Palo Alto area. We created what's called H4X Labs. You might want to note that. So what we do is the phase 2 awardees out of the Navy program get to go and work with some of the Steve Blank and his crowd out in Silicon Valley to actually push forward and that they help you meet investors. So that's one of the things to think a little bit with the Department of Defense. A lot of times it's not, a lot of people go, well, I just want the acquisition people. That's a long road. You can target that, but quite often these programs are entryways into the network that we have a huge network that the Department of Defense has been building up now over the last number of years. And I'll talk about that in a couple of minutes too. Let me switch over to slides real quick here. And make sure I'm getting the right one here. Okay. Is it up there?
Looks great.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, my screen's a little different here, but that's okay. So these will be available to everybody. So what I did is I just put some key areas. Since I've been involved in the clean tech area since even before the Obama administration, so I've lived through several administrations and that. So these are the areas that I know really work very well, that clean tech area. A lot of people don't know startup ESTCP. A big piece of that is the Installation Resilience Program. Sorry, misspelled that. But those are direct matches to a lot of the clean tech technologies. And these focus on the installation side, where there's a very, I've always talked to people and made the point that installations use commercial technology. They should use commercial technology because that's where the leading edges are in that space. And installations are cities. That's what they are. And so what you're doing in the clean tech world is a direct match to things that are happening. And very much so now in the across the services, because there is a large press for investment in climate change, climate impact, call it climate resilience in our world. In terms of how do we ensure we're set up for the near term and the long term. And that also brings in, when you think clean tech, it's not always about energy. We work in water spaces, we work in environmental spaces. A lot of the stuff that's in clean tech isn't necessarily all about energy. I'm an energy person myself, so obviously that's what I know the most about. But there's a huge area to be working in that space. Infrastructure, building technologies, huge interest area in that kind of space with across the Department of Defense. And if you look at this number of links, and what I did also is I put the Stanford, I always push for the Stanford H4D class. I've been involved with that for a number of years. And there's a couple of good links in there. Class itself is interesting. If you aren't familiar with hacking for defense, it's across the United States and even globally now. If you happen to be with the university or you're associated with the university, it's a great way to get involved in terms of understanding the mission needs of the Department of Defense, even if you just participate. It is a student-oriented class, but they have created startups coming out of that, and they do provide, again, Silicon Valley support for those activities. And then the Hacking for Defense newsletter by Jeff Decker, a friend of mine out there. He published a newsletter. It's actually worth following his newsletter. I just saw he did something on deployment. His last note, I get emails every day pretty much from him. And if you click on that, what you'll see is a full list of grants for the Department of Defense, where you can find it across the services. Different, you won't see SBIRs. SBIRs are contracts, they're not grants, but it's all the grants. So if you're researching in the field, university in particular, but there are, we've done companies as well, different time. It's had a full list across the board of across the services, including the Office of Secretary of Defense, which has various joint activities that play a role in that. So I would encourage take a look at those. And again, those will be available to everybody. Let me jump into another side of this. Susan mentioned in my resume. Over the years, I've always understood the importance of engaging with communities in this space, and how that's really where, if a company understands how to work with community, it does a couple things. One, it creates great connections for you. I was going to make the point that many of the people I've supported through the years get their kickstart from the state funds because they're local. They know their people. They vote for those people, right? And so they know exactly how to do that. And that can lead to growth from federal money. Sometimes it's best to start at the state level. And I would recommend, if you're not familiar with what's called manufacturing extension partnerships, every state has one of these, the MEC. Those are actually supported through the Department of Commerce, and they are involved with how to work in manufacturing. Their job is to work across the state for manufacturing for small and medium-sized businesses. So it's a perfect match for startups in that space. They also happen to have ties to they're very good at, people I've worked with, they're very good at raising additional dollars for the Economic Development Agency. That's some big dollars, right? And needless to say, a lot of those monies have come for the more recent bill. They're getting a lot more money coming in those things. You'll see things like tech hubs. That's the big thing these days, tech hubs. So you really want to pay attention to what's going in your area around tech hub communities and what's being developed. Again, those are state, regional, and state level. Keep that in mind. These are not, you can talk to the federal people, they may be funding it, but you have to build a consortium or partnerships within your local and state communities to actually be competitive in that space. So you don't have to go it alone. You can get a whole bunch of people to work with you. And so that's one thing to keep in mind. The other piece of this is, I'm sure people are familiar with accelerators. And so we have, what I found, I've attended some meetings last week in DC. Actually, Secretary of Energy was actually there speaking at one of the events. And so we've done what we sort of built out in the Department of Defense. You kind of wonder why, but we were looking at from dual use. One of the accelerators that we established a number of years ago was an original funder of that, Elemental Accelerator. Elemental, you can look it up real quick. And that's one that teamed up with Emerson Collective a number of years ago, Lauren Pell's jobs organization. And they're very focused on social equity. Thank you, Greg. It was an awesome presentation on that. So that's a huge piece. And you're going to go, well, first of all, it's very gratifying. I'll give you this. But also the point being is that you have to, in many of these cases now, you have to understand that. And believe me, you work with the community, you just win across the board when you do that type of thing. We also have one up in Alaska called Launch Alaska, and the other ones exist. I'm just pointing those two because those are the ones I'm very, very familiar with. And and one thing these do is the same thing. If you get awards in those particular cases, and it's not just the other accelerators, they are really good about taking you and getting you introduced to a range of people. In fact, they brought up their latest cohort and met with congressional members, investors, et cetera, from DC. And again, a wide range of Green Bank people were there and so forth. So it's one of the reasons you want to compete in these things. The money's important. The network is much more important. That's something you think about when you're building these things out. Think about the partnerships. Money's important. The partnerships are the key to being able to move forward in the future. And along those lines, if you happen to be in an area that you can go find them anyway, but it's Department of Defense is actually now has set up, the Air Force did it originally under AFWorks. If you're familiar with that, they have an SBIR program that's got very big. In fact, they put their SBIR program under AFWorks. Well, within the Navy, we established the Naval X and the various tech bridges located across the country. Just the Naval X, tech bridges, go to the website. I didn't put these slides in necessarily, but easy to find. Take a look at that. Very importantly, those are the entry points to go talk to someone one-on-one. I try to talk to people about this. They say, I was at home for 25 years, right? If someone sent a cold proposal in, I might look at it, or maybe I don't have time. The key is talk to people first and find out what they want. If you find that match, it saves you a couple. One, better chance at better proposal. And if it's not interesting, you don't spend your time writing a proposal and sending it in that no one really is going to particularly care about, right? That's just the way, that's government. That's the way the government works, especially the Department of Defense. So I would recommend taking a look at that, look where the Department of Defense organizations are. Very importantly, Defense Innovation Unit as well. And it's primarily has been in Menlo Park area. I think they had a couple other places, but very importantly, and we'll see how this plays, they're establishing what are called mission acceleration centers around the country. I think there's like 5 now. They're just starting to come online. That's a place where you can go and meet with the people one-on-one. They have events, or you can just go in and talk with these people. What do they need? You can talk about what you can provide to them, listen to them, what they want to, and then understand how what you have would fit their mission needs. That's the key there. And keep the key is focused on that aspect of it and less so about, I love technology, I'm a research scientist, right? But less about the details of that, more about how that can actually comply with what they're looking for. So those are coming online. In fact, they just had at South by Southwest also, they created some new defense innovation space there, the Capitol Factory. If you've never been to South by Southwest, I recommend going to that now. That innovation area has really expanded. Again, it's attending these things to meet people, build those partnerships, build that network out. That's the way you'll be successful in this business. The other thing I was going to talk briefly about, I think a lot of it's got covered, fortunately. Let's see. Oh, I guess I could have gone to that, couldn't I? Sorry. So so this is a slide. What happened, I was just a couple of times I've been encouraging the Department of Defense to pay attention to this money that's coming online. And so as opposed to just constantly reminding them to take a look at this, I just created a cheat sheet intended actually for my organization, which is involved in a lot of the Cleantech space. These are just things you can take a look at. Greg did a great job of talking about a lot of these things for Department of Energy. You'll see I picked a few things out that are more kind of in that zone of areas that the Navy installations could figure out. NOAA's a big one for us. We're the Navy. No shock, we have a lot of partnership with NOAA in that space. And then I'm a huge fan of the EPA IRA. And in fact, at this event last week, the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, that was one of the primary discussion points at that. That's a huge opportunity for people to participate. And then you can go into don't forget the CHIPS and Science Act. That tends to be more of an R&D type of funding, but it involves, like I mentioned, these regional technology innovation hubs. I would go and look at the website and figure out where those existed. I think they announced 32 of them a month or so ago around the country. Another great place to go and find out what's really going on and get connected with your local and regional communities in their case. And the NSF has a tons of stuff out there. And obviously they are big in startups as well through their I-Corps program. Same people that created Hacking for Defense, by the way, I-Corps. So if you know one or the other, actually the same people in that regard. So I would recommend taking a look at that. And these convergence accelerators haven't been around a while, but I just started following those. Again, these are these accelerators for regional economic development that are coming online. They're growing. The areas now are kind of the areas I think would be direct interest to maybe some of the clean tech community. So I would take a look at those, look at the ones that already exist, and in fact, what topics might come up. But again, these are things that are starting, and they have phase 1 and phase 2s. So the phase 1 is a modest amount of money, and things like the regional innovation engines. There's in the phase 2, the awardees are going to get 160 million per awardee. I think that's over 5 years. I think 10 years or 5. I forget now. Sorry, but so there's a lot of money going into these kind of places, and the key is find out where they are, figure out can you play a role in these. And again, joining up in a regional community. So I think that's pretty much all I have to. I'm happy to answer any questions. Oh, and to reach me, the best way to reach me, go on LinkedIn. That's my best response. Emails don't always get through to me, by the way. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Richard. So there are a decent number of questions already in the chat. So I'm just going to ask a couple questions and then we'll move right to what is on the attendees' mind. But let me just start with, are you allowed to double up? So if you get money in an SBIR from the DOE, can you also get it from the DOD? Or do you need to kind of pick a path and go down that front independently?
I would say, yeah, the more the merrier. I know with our SBIR phase 0 path, if you go through them and they help you develop your project or your technology, you can take that same application and go apply for, DOD or the Department of Commerce. Like it's, yeah. Yes, to answer your question, yes.
So you can double up. That's great. And there is a ton of information that is going to go out to every person on this webinar. The most precious resource an entrepreneur has in the early days is time, and it's the most scarce. What's the most efficient way of successfully ultimately getting funds from the government? Is it really truly starting with that networking and meeting somebody who actually works for the department you're going to be applying for? Or is it hiring somebody to navigate through the process that's already done it? Like, if you were advising these folks who are now very interested in clamoring and they've seen something that really resonates, what should their first next step be to accelerate the process for getting those funds? And what should they have in mind from the time they first make that phone call or send that email about it to when they would get funds?
Richard, did you want to go?
Yeah, real quick. So because I kind of pushed on that really, and I think you have to do that really, but it doesn't, but at the same time, you're 24/7, right? 365. And so you should be putting proposals like this. Let's say you're very early, SBR phase 1, assuming you want federal dollars, right? But again, you have to look for a topic that's a fit. Sometimes we have open topics, so that worked well. So, but that is where I think in the end, I worked for a small business myself for a while, and we wrote proposals over and over again, right? Didn't really network like we should have, and so we never got off the ground. So, so the key is you need to be submitting, do the competition. We do pay attention to that. Like if you say I won such and such a thing, you may go, well, some people may not know that in DoD. I would probably know. If you won the mass challenge or something, I'm going to go awesome, right? So, and then you can see that. So it's important to be out there, not inside. It's a Steve Blank's philosophy: get out of the building.
Yeah,
agreed. And definitely your network. Like one of the things I like about any government, function or opportunity, the biggest thing you gain is making relationships in that room. I've seen where, as a matter of fact, we had a DOE summit in 2023. And the other day I got off the phone with at least 2 separate companies where they are currently doing business together because of that summit. So you definitely need to network. You need to leverage your network, and don't be afraid to ask the questions. It's not, we're not here to hide anything from you. It really is, are you interested in finding this opportunities? I would say also let's look at the levels of funding. So we'll have prizes, we'll have loans, and funding opportunities. Prizes typically have the shorter window for opportunity, so you can obtain prizes a lot quicker. The loan is probably the second way to go, but of course, if you don't meet the capital constraints, then it probably will take you just as long to do a funding opportunity. Funding opportunities typically the applications are anywhere from 6 to 9 months. I think it was a number that was thrown out was 250 hours of time dedicated to some of these funding opportunities. So it is definitely some work to be put into this process, but people are winning them. But what you're seeing also, so for instance, Dr. Lulu's would be a perfect candidate. Like we meet with tons of individuals who do the grant writing, who have already done the process, and they're like, hey, yeah, we can get you through this. We have, success stories where we've actually won, some opportunities. So that could be a way to go as well. So but it really is you being persistent.
Exactly. All right, I'm going to move now to the questions that we have in the chat. So Greg, I think this is actually one that came when you were speaking, so I'm going to direct it to you. Does HubZone as a concept count towards that 40%?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yes, it does.
Great. And then how accessible is the DOE LPO? Is there a minimum loan amount they permit? How are the interest rates and payment terms set in the LPO program?
Okay, so because I'm not directly involved with the LPO, the best thing I can tell you is that I've heard that the applications vary. So for instance, with Elon Musk and Tesla, he needed a large amount of money. He needed to have a major deposit to gain that money. Whereas there's an individual I'm working with where he's doing microgrids, portable microgrids, but he doesn't need that capital. So it just varies. I think I put in the chat, there's a link to go to actually just get a no cost consultation of applying for funding.
Got it. Dr. Lulu, here's a question about the SBIR STTR, which is does the government end up with any IP rights and or ownership to the project or the technology under SBIR or STTR?
That's a very great question. To my understanding, the government does not own the IP, but the government has the right to use, for example, the software and the technology that's developed from the funded research.
Okay. And then this is also around SBIR, so I'll direct it to you as well. How does the SBIR review committee rank competitiveness? And the entrepreneur is asking, should we focus on the commercial potential as if they were investors, or what weight do we put on the scientific innovation as if it's an academic presentation or the societal benefit associated with it?
Good question. This is also on the checklist slide that I include before you put together a proposal. Read the evaluation criteria. So each solicitation, the language might be different when describing their review criteria. And some of solicitation, they even be more clear to give you a percentage and how much weight they put on for each individual criteria. But overall, there are a couple of areas I think the entrepreneurs should be focusing. First, the significance and impact. And what's the problem you are addressing, and how large is the market, and what kind of impact your solution will generate if it's successfully developed. And the second is the innovation. And third, whether you have a very concrete research plan for that proposed project, and whether you have a team together to be able to execute the research plan. And very lastly, the commercialization plan potential. Do you have a business model, and are you clear with your market? And when you consider who are on the review panel, usually the review panel are comprised with a couple of experts, usually from both sides. The subject matter expert in your technology field, and also expert with the commercialization experience. So try to satisfy both those aspects to have a very competitive proposal.
Great. And this question sounds like it's coming from somebody who may have themselves a product that is in the indoor air quality kind of space. But if you have a simple product, they're asking, that could be used in government and or retail, like a natural disinfectant or a natural air freshener, what agency would oversee something that's around improving indoor air, or do multiple agencies oversee things that are related to natural products, indoor air, toxins, things like that?
It would be multiple agencies. I would say if a person already has a product and they're not looking to do any funding opportunities, then most likely they're going to start looking for contracts. And that would be under sam.gov, sam.gov. I'll type it in the chat. But that's typically where I direct people who are looking to capture opportunities to work with the government or work for the government through procurement.
And if they were wanting to develop something that was, a substitute for a very toxic chemical or product that's often used in buildings or things like that, where would you direct them?
Yeah, so that's that unsolicited proposal that Richard had mentioned. And it's, if it's harder to get through.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that actually is a nice tie-in to one of the entrepreneurs who says they're slightly confused about what is the ultimate goal of the SBR to advance technology development, or is it to find a solution to a specific, product or outcome to a specific office? And, like a study or a product that's developed, how should we be thinking about it, and how should you frame an application kind of into it? And I think it depends on the solicitation from what I'm hearing, but would love to hear, the group's thoughts on kind of the ultimate goal of the SBIR funds.
SBR
Richard.
only, sorry.
No, I was
Go ahead, Dr. Lulu.
SBR mechanism is primarily product driven. So there is a unmet need, or there is a problem, and you are defining the end product. But the phase 1 and the phase 2 are the research you are taking from the idea stage to the prototype to further development and validation. But the end goal is a product.
And do the solicitations, they're pretty specific about what problem they're trying to solve in most cases, as opposed to being open-ended?
It depends
Right.
whether it's a contract or it's a grant. For example, NSF, you release the solicitation as a grant, and they welcome all the innovative ideas and the solution as long as there is a clear market need. The solution is targeting. Basically, you have a lot of freedom to propose what's in your mind. However, for the contract opportunities, there usually a clear need, and also there are a description of the metrics or how the end product will look like. For example, a lot of DoD SBR contracts, they are very specific. So it really depends on what are the topic or the agency that you are targeting.
Got it. So if you have just the wildest, craziest ideas, NSF as a place to start is what I'm hearing. Okay. All right. Is any of this funding applicable to technology application, not development, such as helping a commercial building reduce consumption and meet net zero targets?
The answer is yes. It's a somewhat variable, but one of the example is we set up for Secretary many years ago was he wanted to put new technologies onto bases. So what we were looking at, it was kind of like more early technology, but commercial technology, and bring it in and show value on that application. So if you are, it kind of goes back to Greg's point. If you're looking to I've got a product and I want to try to get a major contract to deploy this across the service, go to SAM, you need to go to the contracting place. But all these places can be, ESTCP is something like that, by the way. If you have a good technology, ideally commercial, so it's already kind of potentially scalable. That program specifically designed, it's the Environmental Security Technology Evaluation Program, right? Certification program, sorry. It's intended to actually look at technologies and validate it onto the basis. So it fits right in there. It's a slight line. It's not designed to solve the big problem, but you get it validated through that program, and then things can move forward. One thing I forgot to mention too, if you go to like DIU, and I think this actually is going to expand, which kind of plays a little bit into this, is that they use what are called commercial solutions opening. So if you have a product that is a commercial solution, if it happens to be a fit, and I think services are going to pick these things up, they're called other transactions. If you go through and competitively awarded, you are sole sourced into production. That's a very important aspect when you're thinking about this, because typical way it works, even if you get SBIR award or these type of things, if you want to go beyond that, turns out you can be sole sourced SBIR too. But there's a lot of programs though that don't necessarily do that, just get recompeted for a commercial to full deployment aspect of things. So look for those things. SBIR allows that. sole source. They love you. They can sole source you to move forward. The DIU and organizations like that with the OTs, you can go straight into production from a prototype aspect of things.
How much support and funding is going to innovations that are bringing essentially manufacturing and capabilities back from being primarily done overseas in sort of a local security resilience? You know, some of the stuff we saw during COVID where we couldn't get masks because it wasn't, you know, supply chain was a mess and we couldn't get things locally. Is some of this funding going to essentially build America, for lack of a better word, and kind of that component?
Yes. So, but when you look at the Defense Department in particular, right? So we have our own chip manufacturing capabilities, by the way. So you look at the CHIPS Act, that's exactly what it was all about, right? In terms of that was the whole point there. DoD is very concerned about the logistics chain, in particular from the starting from the manufacturer. And this is why I mentioned the manufacturing extension partnerships. That's a big piece of this. And it's, you know, you can say build America. I mean, that's the philosophy, right? But there are a whole bunch of other reasons for doing this. And so from a security standpoint, so it is a big national security topic area and very important for the Department of Defense.
Got it. And I know one of the teams on this call happens to be particularly interested in the BABA, you know, the bill funding, which is also becoming available for some things as well. We're not going to touch on that today, but if teams were interested in learning more about BABA, who would they go to in the federal government? Any idea?
What was the acronym again?
It's the Build America, I'm looking at Anthea for support.
Buy America, Build America.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have any direct information.
Right, we will get,
is it a challenge or
yeah,
it-
we will, we'll follow-up materials, we'll get links and things like that, because that's another source. The other one that I wanted to mention, just that I know isn't represented on this call, but I want to encourage the entrepreneurs, particularly given my own experience, is that the state funding that is available is also becoming very transformational for Cleantech. Just to give you a sense, here in Massachusetts, we've had a longstanding organization called the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center. They do grants, they do loans, but they do direct investments, and they will follow, but they will also from time to time lead, because they know that while it might not be the biggest check, that's the catalyst that the entrepreneur really needed to be able to pull together the round. And they were one of our investors, and it was an incredible organization to work with, super supportive. And while it hasn't passed yet, there's been over $1 billion earmarked for this next budget by the current governor for clean tech funding in Massachusetts. Same kind of funding is happening in New York, California, and other states. And so make sure you're, you know, also continuing to look not just at the federal funds, SBIR, IRA, grants, loans, et cetera, but recognize similar opportunities can exist in the state. The catch in most places is they will want you to be either headquartered or have significant operations in that state, because what is often, you know, yes, it's catalyzing from an economic development standpoint, but workforce is a really component. And one of the success metrics is how many jobs are created in that state. But it's certainly something that we would encourage you to look forward and things like that. I'm going to put a last opportunity out to put questions in the chat for our fabulous speakers, and a reminder that we will be sending you out the presentation and the recording afterwards, knowing there's so many links and so much dense, fabulous information in it for you. And I think there's a question here around the technology review and acronyms. It might have been the DIU acronym or something like that, but they were looking for some acronyms explained around the technology review.
Not sure exactly. I just saw that myself. So
Yeah.
Defense Innovation Unit is one.
Defense
That
Innovation
comes
Unit is
under,
what DIU stands for, gang. Okay, good.
I
That cleared it up
apologize
for
for
me.
that. I'm so used to just saying it now. It's been around so long. And then there's what they do is what's called the commercial solutions opening, you'll see it CSO. So that's one of these what are called other transaction, OT. These aren't necessarily review. These are solicitations that are out there. That's why the review kind of throw me off. So I don't know if there's something else. If you want to, if the person who put that in wants to say something, ask me
I was going
something
to say,
further,
if the
maybe I
person
can
who asked that
clarify
question,
that.
if that didn't answer it, please come off mute
Right.
and give us a chance to clarify before we go.
Hi, you were speaking, Ms. Carlin, before you said DIU, you were saying there was another type of maybe review, or you were just giving us some tips on another, I'm not sure if it was accelerator, but I think you used maybe an acronym with that as well. I was trying to write that down.
Yeah, there's various accelerators. I think the Elemental got posted. And then the Launch Alaska, that's up in Anchorage actually. I would take a look at those because they are in the clean tech space and social equity space, by the way. So they kind of fit both paths. Not sure what else. I mean, I apologize. I do tend to get into the topic pretty deeply and talk fast.
All right. It's a good start. As we like to say, there's no way in an hour and a half to cover everything you all have covered. This is the top level for teams to be able to direct. I did see a question we just missed that goes, I think, Greg, to you. For DOE topics that are very specific, should we be doing customer discovery with key communities? The DOE doesn't often publish how to get a hold of some of those. I think there are some restrictions on what information they can share. And Terrence, if that didn't, if you want to clarify further, please feel free to come off mute.
Oh, sure. So the main thing is like if you had a specific thing, like one grant, it was like the nuclear forensics community. And I was trying to get a hold of essentially anybody in that community to to get feedback from. And the main contact person, they couldn't give out that information. So I was wondering if there's kind of a way to kind of how much should you know about a specific topic or the people doing that work? Because some of the people were like, oh, you don't know enough about nuclear forensics, but we were still answering their questions. But some of those things that we got pinned on the review could have come out if we actually talked to some of those communities beforehand. So that's what kind of was meaning yeah. So it's just making sure you're on the right track and then knowing who is going to be kind of maybe a reviewer or kind of the target audience for that topic, if it's very specific.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's actually a great question. One of the challenges that we face is pretty much anyone can be a reviewer.
Sure.
Yeah. So you would hope that there would be individuals that were experts in that area, but it's a government project, or program, so individuals can participate in that process. As far as them withholding information from you, was it that you applied for the funding? I'm just
no, it was in the when the topic was released, I asked them, it's do you have contact information for people at Los Alamos who are doing this work or something like that, and they couldn't share or they couldn't help direct me to any of those communities, and they seemed very siloed, and there wasn't any publicly accessible information of who those groups were. So navigating that was a really difficult thing.
Unfortunately, that is the nature of the beast.
Okay.
How about this? How about this? Now, one thing you can do is, how about this? Do you have in my presentation, I left my contact information. Worst case scenario, we have a conversation. I can't point you in the right direction, but I can at least, help provide some additional information or try to answer some further questions.
Okay. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Greg. All right, we're going to take I don't see any more questions, so I'm going to now remind our speakers that we had 50 plus people who are trying to start innovative companies in the clean tech space to ensure that we have the human race can continue to persist on our own planet. And we've got not a lot of time and a lot of work to do. and not a lot of time being the emphasis. So what advice would you have for these folks, all of whom are generally in the relatively early stages of building a business, as next steps for really kicking the tires for funding in the area that you've talked about today? What would you recommend as their next steps? So Greg, I'm going to let you start.
I think, yeah, I touched on it earlier, just building your networks, finding mentors, finding individuals that are doing some of the things that you want to do. Not limiting yourself to your specific technology. Like I have a guy, like I mentioned earlier, he developed this portable microgrid. Literally, he has a backpack where he can walk up to your house and power your house. However, he didn't have specific, components to, go to the next level. So, it wasn't that, his technology wasn't good. He just didn't have the manufacturing. He didn't have, other ideas or other things that would help him get to that next level. And it just, it started as a conversation like, wow, this is a cool technology. Who's doing this for you? And he didn't have any answers. So it was like, okay, well then let's look into this direction. So just staying open to, yes, your technology may be, very, life-changing, but at the same time, what other things could you actually, could make your product better through either partnership or, just adding an additional, I don't know, components or even people to your process and your product or service.
So Lulu.
Yeah, I think non-dilutive funding is a great resource to leverage for early stage companies, especially the SBI or SBR mechanism. I would highly recommend entrepreneurs do some homework to search for the funding opportunities that are a good fit for you. Develop that Gantt chart I showed early. Go to conferences such as the SBI or STTR. They have a fall and also a spring innovation conference. And to know more about this program, and in that conference, you can meet the program officers, directors from all the participating agencies. You can have one-on-one, have a chat with them, and introduce your solution and gain some feedback from them. And also talk to the fellow entrepreneurs, and there might be some good experience to share and exchange. And also as a firm, we can help you to develop that non-dilutive funding strategy to help you search opportunities, do that timeline, and give you the funding limit and recommend some strategy. And we can also help you to write proposals to relieve some of the burden off you if you have limited bandwidth.
Awesome. Richard.
So I think it's, just to double down on everybody else said and what I kind of let it go. I did dump one more link in there. It's called the National Security Innovation Network. And so they actually now are under the Defense Innovation Unit. So they're a direct line to the bigger dollars, but they are more involved in like that, the earlier stage aspects. I just looked at their website real quick. There's an Expeditionary Energy Challenge coming up. So that's where Cleantech could play a role. So I'd encourage, and they're in Boston, they're everywhere, by the way. And so they're all over the country as well. So that's the thing with the Defense Department. It's been going on a while, but now I think it's really getting its feet on the ground and starting to do the right things and to truly have a broader engagement with the community. So I would just encourage you to participate in as many of those as you possibly can. It's time, but I think it's time well spent.
All right. And as an entrepreneur who has funded and exited in this space, I would just tell you, get used to the idea that particularly if you're the CEO, your most important job is to make sure you don't run out of money. That means your job is to research and bring in money, whether you bring in people to help you do that or you're taking the lead on that with your team, that is your job. There's incredible resources out there. It just is a lot of work. And so just stay strong, stay persistent. Think of it as your second job on top of your first job. That's the 80-hour week, 40 goes into fundraising, but you can do it. And there's no better time to do it, and there's no better calling to do it than there is right now. So with that, folks, we're going to get you back to your day. Greg, Richard, Lulu, thank you so much for your time and energy. This is exactly what this group of folks needs to take it to the next level, and we appreciate your gift of your time today. With that, we'll sign off, and thank you all for attending, and we'll get you the materials in a few days. Bye-bye.
Take care,
Thanks, everybody.
everybody.